You are listening to ESL Talk, a podcast made for English teachers by English teachers.
Hello, and welcome to our brand new episode of ESL Talk. I'm Faye.
And I'm Daniel.
We hope you were able to get some great advice on teaching exam prep in last week's episode.
Yep, this week we're going to move on to the tricky topic of teaching young learners.
Yeah, we're going to take a deep dive into this topic. And as we know, some teachers, like me, can find it difficult to teach younger students.
Yeah, me too as well. And again, we'll be joined by our guest, Carina, who has taught and led a number of training programs for teachers on teaching young learners.
Yes, and she also shares her extensive experience of teaching ESL to young learners in both Brazil and Canada.
Yeah, so let's get this topic started for today. Let's share some of our own experiences on teaching young learners. So Faye, what experience have you had with teaching young learners so far?
My one and only experience teaching young learners happened many years ago when I had just started teaching back in Brazil, and I was asked to sub for an ESL class for preschoolers. I'd been teaching adults for about a year then, and I would often teach 10-hour days, like business English, exam prep and all that. And that for those 90-minute class, I was more exhausted than after a full day of teaching adult learners.
Yeah.
And that experience made me find this really deep admiration for teachers of young learners. It's incredible.
Yeah.
What about you? What's your experience been like?
Yeah, when I first started teaching, I started at the middle school, high school level. So it was mainly teenagers, which was a little bit more manageable. Mm-hmm. But I did do almost 2 years in an elementary school, teaching from like grades 3 up to grade 6, which I guess is like from 6 to 10 or 11 years old. So It was fun. It was enjoyable. I was still relatively young at that time, so I could manage. But I definitely hear you when you say you did feel exhausted sometimes because the amount of energy needed and the amount of energy that young students have, that's great. But I guess for me now, and I guess for you as well, adult learners are definitely the area that we enjoy teaching the most.
And what did you enjoy about working with young learners? We'll talk about the positives first.
I think I enjoyed their curiosity, their energy, their enthusiasm. A lot of the time they came to class, they were really excited. I think they really enjoyed the lessons, and we did a lot of, I always try to make the lessons fun and exciting for students so that they'd come away with some kind of positive influence or positive note from the lesson. So I'd always try to do that. And then I also enjoyed as well the fact that I could kind of be creative, try new things, try to be a little bit more kind of imaginative and more fun with them. Like, for example, some classes we just go outside and we do stuff on like the solar system or sports or some cultural stuff with food and stuff like that. So that was really fun. Stuff I couldn't really do with adults. What about for you? What did you enjoy? If you enjoyed anything, that is.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I can definitely see the upsides in it, right? Like the connection you can form with children is really rewarding. It's just a lot involved. So it can be daunting, but I really love the fact that, like you said, like as a teacher, the sillier you are, the more fun you can have with it, and the more the students will enjoy it and learn. And that's really liberating too, because I have more of a goofy personality, and I sometimes with adult learners, I'm silly too, and I make jokes, but it doesn't always come across that way. And, we're more self-conscious in that sense. And I think it was really nice to see their little faces lighting up and how excited they got with like the simplest activities. And I would be like, now we're going to do this activity. And they're like, yay, and it's like it's the excitement you don't always get from adult learners. So I think those are really enjoyable aspects of it. Now, are there any activities specifically or task types that you tried and worked really well with your young learners?
Yeah, I mean, right now I do teach a couple of young learners, kind of 10, 11 years old. And what we do is reading. So we do a lot of reading activities, and it's not just reading for the sake of reading. It's, we look at vocabulary, we look at kind of context, we predict stuff, we try to look at some pictures, and we try to guess what's going to happen. So we build fluency that way. So reading always works well. That can work well in the class or online, depending on how you deliver it. Dancing, that's always popular. Students love to get up and move around. It doesn't necessarily have to be dancing like some kind of routine, but just getting up, moving their bodies. That's something that they enjoy, and it helps them kind of get their energy out as well, especially with the little ones.
And do you join in and dance with them?
I mean, I've had to. I'm pretty awkward at the best of times. So I mean, it's fine. When you're in that environment, it doesn't
Yeah,
matter. But
exactly. They're not
yeah,
judging you, right? Yeah.
exactly. So yeah, I've had to in my younger years. And then songs as well. Songs are good. Again, if you can add kind of a song to maybe a type of lesson or a theme, then that helps them to remember things, and you can kind of tie
Right.
that into active learning. So clapping, signals, gestures, that kind of thing. It all
Yeah.
kind of connects together pretty well. Those are just a few activities that I try, along with building kind of building conversational skills through simple questions, starting off with yes no questions and then going to W questions, just to build that up as well. So those things work pretty well for me. What about for
Mm-hmm.
you? What's worked well for you with young learners when you've taught them?
Um, well, I was just that one class, but what this makes me think of is like there are some of these activities you mentioned that I've tried even with adults,
Mhm.
and it worked. Every time I would teach the Cambridge prep class, I would teach. There was one lesson we did that was about health and the body.
Mhm.
Every time I taught that lesson, I started with head, shoulders, knees, and toes. And I made
Okay.
my students, and I never told them what I was doing. I would tell them, okay, now let's do something different. Let's everybody get up. Okay, and let's see how much you know. And I would go like, touch your head. And they would like touch their head and kind of look around awkwardly. Now touch your shoulders. Now touch
Hmm.
your knees. And then I would start to repeat it faster. And then I would get into the song.
Uh-huh.
And they would start dancing without realizing they were dancing to and then they would start, everybody would start laughing.
Yep.
Um, and that's the kind of thing I find that you can easily do with young learners. But a lot of it are things you can use with your adult learners as well, as long as you are not afraid to be the silly one or look silly or lead by example. Your
Right.
students will get into it as well, right?
So why do you think some teachers don't enjoy teaching younger students? Why? What do you think are the reasons? Is it like we mentioned earlier?
Yeah, like I said, if you want to make your lessons fun and connect with your students, it's naturally going to be very draining. So I think that this can be a huge factor in it. You're really tired after a class, but I also think it takes a particular set of skills and a personality type that I myself don't have. I like order, predictability. I like a certain element of
Mhm.
control,
Yeah.
and I think that can be hard to maintain with a class of young learners. And actually, when I think of all of the great teachers of young learners that I know, all the coworkers I've had over the years that were sort of the models, they have a more easygoing personality. They're still assertive and they can still be the teacher, but they're definitely more easygoing and can go with the flow a bit more in that sense. So that balance is quite hard to have and achieve.
Mhm.
And not to mention the fact that you're not just teaching a language, you're still educating little humans, right? And dealing with their parents sometimes. So there's a lot
Yes.
involved, right? What do you think can be the challenging aspects of it?
Yeah, I think, like you said, parents can be a huge issue. Something I've mentioned on previous episodes, dealing with their
Mm-hmm.
expectations. And sometimes it seems strange, but parents don't really know what they want for their child. And
Mm-hmm.
the child doesn't always want to do what their parents want them to do. So you have
Right.
to strike a balance there. So that can kind of be a little bit stressful, I think. And then within that as well, I think some teachers, they find it difficult to pitch certain material at the level of the student. And
Mm.
usually with younger students, you might be teaching groups, 2 or 3 students at a time. So it can be really tricky to pitch it at that level to make sure that everyone's involved, everyone's participating, and that they're getting the most out of the lesson. So I think those are a
True.
couple of challenges to think about.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah. And have you
shall,
had any special training to help you teach young learners?
I did have, when I was in Korea, I did have some orientation that I did, which was mandatory, which is like a 2 week orientation, kind of a crash course. So not
Mm-hmm.
really. A lot of it was on the job training, but then once I did my master's and then I did my teaching license and then
Mm-hmm.
my TESOL certificate and then my TESOL diploma, I picked up a lot of really useful strategies, a lot of really useful techniques to help me. It's really difficult because you can learn a lot of different strategies and techniques, but it depends on who are my students, what setting am I in, how many students do I have, what's their ability level.
Yeah.
So all of those things you have to consider, I think, with young learners. But I would say just, finding what works best for your learners is the best training that you can do. And that just takes time and experience.
Yeah.
Kind of a cliche response, but anyway.
No, but true nonetheless.
Yeah. So what are some ways that things can go wrong with young learners, and how do you think we can remedy these issues? I know for me, a lot of the time it's been where, some students, they don't really have the patience to want to go through the first part of the lesson, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, which is needed. They just want to do the fun thing or the game or the activity.
Right.
And then again, as I mentioned before, parents, their expectations and their kind of pressures, both on you as a teacher and on the child, can be really difficult. But what do you think? What experiences have you had?
I now I have the perspective of a mother as well. And I keep thinking of my experiences in different classes. I've been taking my daughter to like music classes now that things are opening up again after the pandemic, but like music classes and sports classes. And it's always in a group setting, and parents have to be there too, or even at the playground. And I mean, kids fight, or they take each other's toys, or, they get on each other's nerves all the time, and they don't have the coping mechanisms we have. They don't know the social norms that we do. So I think that can be a challenging aspect too, as a teacher, because you're going to have to deal with all of these behavioral issues as well, and intervening, and, all of those things like, come on, remember, we need to share. And, all of those, like I said before, you're educating them as well. And I think that those are definitely things that can go wrong, and having the ability to intervene and be the adult in all of the situations like that. I
think it just ties into having that patience and that kind of, that calm persona, which can be exhausting, which is kind of what we refer to initially. So
absolutely.
Great. Some really interesting points that we've raised then so far on the podcast. We're now going to go to the interview with Carina. I'm going to hear a little bit more about this topic.
Carina, thanks for joining us again for another episode. You are our first guest to be featured on 2 different episodes.
That's amazing. I feel very honored.
Thanks again, Carina. Yeah, we can't wait to hear all about your strategies for teaching young learners. So you have touched on this, obviously, the first time we had you on as a guest. But tell me, Carina, what are the main reasons why you enjoy teaching young learners? Because for me, it's not something I particularly enjoy. I do it sometimes.
Me neither.
What are your reasons? Why do you enjoy it?
I enjoy teaching them because I feel that they're very open. They're open to anything you bring. And they're also very honest about it. So they will say, I like it, or I hate it on your face. And you wouldn't really take it personal. As you know that they're being just kids.
Honest, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I guess that's one of the things why a lot of people can't teach kids like me or Daniel. They're very honest.
Yeah. And I think it's just in terms of the amount of energy required mentally. I just find that sometimes after I've taught a young learner, it might have been a wonderful lesson, but I just find myself very mentally drained. And I don't know why that is, but
mentally and physically.
Yes, that's true.
So on that note, what should we consider as teachers? What do we need to consider when we're teaching young learners as opposed to older learners?
Think about yourself learning a new thing, a new language, right? You bring so many concerns to the class. You have your filter turned on. You don't want to feel embarrassed. You don't want to make mistakes in front of other people. You think a lot before participating. And I feel like teaching kids, they have that too, but just a little. So if you're silly, if you make funny faces, if you provide the students with a, let's say, non-intimidating environment, they will go for whatever you bring. So they're more open to learning and doing things and trying. They're not afraid to try. They're not afraid of making mistakes. The younger they are, I'd say, but of course that with teenagers, they're more conscious about it. But the young ones, they're just, let's go. They go, they buy whatever you're trying to sell.
That's a very positive way of looking at it. I when I asked you the question, I was expecting something a little more, be careful with this or watch out for that. But actually, you surprised me with that. And you made me think, wow, actually, maybe there are advantages to teaching young learners.
Yeah,
that
definitely.
are
Interesting.
many.
Yeah, that filter idea is really good. Yeah.
So, Carina, when it comes to actually teaching the students, why are, TPS, gestures, body language, why are these especially important while teaching young learners? What's the benefit of this? Because, I see that this is something that teachers do a lot and they really stress and emphasize and do very obviously. So why is that?
Kids are very energetic and they learn things by doing. So they see what you do, they copy what you do, and they learn. So it's very important for kids to experiment things, right? They learn through their senses. So touching, smelling, speaking, let's say physical, jumping. How do you learn how to drive? You have to drive, right? You have to do it. So using your body at the same time as you learn a new word will help you retain better. So if you want to teach them some verbs like jump, you're not going to show them a picture only, right? You can show them a picture, but get them to jump. And they will record that information along with their movement, right? And the gestures help also the students understand. So if you're in a class and you say, listen to me, and you say, listen to me, then it will help the students who do not know that word or that command to understand what you want. And that reduces anxiety.
Yes.
So it helps them feel better and pay attention to what you're doing.
Yeah. It reminds me when I worked in elementary school for 2 years, and I would just start 1, 2, 3, and all the students would say in a chorus, eyes on me. So
yes.
That's so nice.
Yeah.
You're right, though. It definitely builds that routine and that familiarity, right? Which is what students need at that age. So yeah, it's great.
Yeah, it sounds also like some of those skills can be used for any age, but what are some other basic skills that we should practice to be able to teach young learners? What would you say is should be in your toolbox?
So I'd say body language. So when you say something, if it can be followed by a gesture, visual input. So as you say it, you have a picture. As you say it, you do it. As you say it, you demonstrate, like talk or speak or listen. Now cut, open the book. So you can use pictures and you can use visuals. And make the language simple. Now you are going to listen, and then you play it. Look, and then you show. So you have to be able to make the language simple. And as the students are used to it already, you can add more. You build on those sentences and they become more complex. So I'd say adjusting the language and adjusting your pace, bringing things back, be creative. You have to do the same thing in different ways. So when you teach, let's say, a vocabulary set, like a fruit, what are the things that you can do to get them to listen, speak, and practice, and maybe read and write, work with the letters, word formation. And so you need at least 5 or 6 different tasks for the same set of words or whatever you're teaching. So creativity has to be part of it.
Yeah, I was going to ask you just to kind of expand on that a little bit more. What are the types of classes, the topics? What are some really popular, simple subjects that you can teach to children that they really enjoy and they're very receptive to?
So whatever is meaningful to the child, you can use that. So if you're teaching maybe actions, you can use superheroes. So it's always that what you want to teach, how is that related to the children's world? If you're teaching food, what are the types of food that they eat, that they see at home? And of course that you can bring something new as well. But if you start with things that they are familiar with, that makes it way easier. So cartoon characters and favorite types of food and even junk food, candy and chocolate and those things. Playground, at the playground. So I'd say contextualize. So what you were teaching, what's the context? Where is this place? At school, at the playground, in my bedroom, having a meal, cooking. So it's all the things that the child is able to do and is part of their daily life. Then it's a total success.
Yeah, I really like it, that tip of like start with something familiar, right? They will be much more open to learning something new. That's with kids in general, right? It just always give that familiarity.
Even with
first.
adults, I would say as well, Faye, if you have that familiarity right from the beginning, it's gonna kind of lower the guard, I guess, and help students feel more familiar. So I guess we've talked about all the positives and all the great things, Carina, but what are some problems you might face when teaching young learners, and how can we overcome them? And there's one word I want to add to this question, which is parents. So
Oh my gosh.
Sorry to throw you into the deep end there.
Okay, now as I parent, I try not to be a parent.
Not one of those
talking
parents.
to a teacher, right? Yeah. So I'd say that and this I learned with experience, years of teaching. So the problems might be behavior, right? The kid is refusing to do something, or they're acting in a way that they're not supposed to in the classroom. So things that you have to consider is that kids are kids. Don't expect them to have an adult behavior. They won't. They are not mature for that. Okay. If they're behaving in a way that is not appropriate, there's something behind it. And you have to try and find why. Why are you refusing to participate? Why are you fighting? Why are you yelling? And so you have to be able to connect. There must be a connection between you and the child, and the child has to trust you. So you're able to find out what the problem is. And you can ask for the parents' help for that. And one tip is work on the expectations, okay? Because sometimes parents have high expectations about the language class. My child is not saying anything. Give your child some time, okay? I had a student who was 3 years old. I remember I was teaching in a regular school, and he was 3 years old, and he wouldn't say a word in my classes. He never said a word. And I'm like, maybe he doesn't like English. What's going on? I'll wait and see. The following year, the student started participating, and he surprisingly brought up everything we talked about the previous year. So he started singing songs. He started retelling the stories I used to tell in the past, like I would tell in the past year. So give them time. Sometimes it's not their time to express themselves. They need time. digest that new thing, that new information, and they will do it at their own pace. So respect the child, respect their moments, and the parents need to be aware of that too. So work on the expectations of the parents, saying that you're teaching the students are for the students to be familiar with the language in a playful way. Each child has a different time, and they might not like it, or and also when you a very precious tip for talking to parents about behavior: don't bring the negative issues at first. Okay, so if you need to talk to a parent about some difficult behavior that you're having with a student in class, just say, I would like to talk to you about your child, because I feel like in the class, sometimes he doesn't participate. So I want to learn more about your child. What are the things that you can share with me that would help me connect with your child a bit more? And what are the things that he likes? What are the things that he doesn't like? And then you started, it's not complaining, because sometimes the child has this behavior with you, but it's not only with you, it's with every teacher.
Yeah.
There's something that is going on at home. So the parent is tired of having teachers complain about that kid.
Yeah.
And they really want teachers to come and help, to bring some tips. So once you start, connect with the parent so you can learn about the child, so you can work together. I'd say that has worked wonders with me.
I think that's a good point too, because I think if I were teaching kids, and like when Daniel asked the question, even we tend to be afraid of the parents, or we want to avoid the parent interactions, mostly because we know it often comes with a lot of baggage and a lot of demands. But that's a good point. If you come from that side of you actually wanting to know more about the child and trying to investigate, you might even prevent a lot of that later on.
I'm just getting some flashbacks, some horror stories now, because there was one situation where I was teaching a child, and he was maybe 8 or 9. He was very bright. His English was very good. And he would ask me certain questions like the spelling or the pronunciation of a word. And I would tell him, and he would say, well, my mother said that it's this. And I'm like, all right. I was like, well, you choose what works best for you if you want to do it that way. And then his mother would be sat just off screen, kind of listening and responding and kind of directing everything. It was a really uncomfortable situation.
Yeah, that's tough.
That's hard for online teaching for sure, because you can't
Definitely.
really control that environment. Yeah,
definitely. But yeah, I think you've raised some really important points, Carina, and communication is really key, and having that positive mindset as well will help you a lot. So let's imagine we're starting out teaching young learners and children. What would an ideal, or what would a really good, solid first lesson look like when teaching those young learners?
I'd say like a needs analysis, very formal, but start up with songs to get the students to introduce themselves and to learn their classmates' names. Work on some personal preferences. The students draw or they cut things that they like, and things that, so the likes and dislikes, I like this, I don't like that, and establishing the rules in the classroom. So a happy face and a sad face. What are the things that we can do here? What are the things that we're not supposed to be doing? When we have a problem, what do we do? Talk to the teacher. So I'd say first class would be songs and fun stuff for kids to get to know each other, learn names, and learn about friends, and connect with, he likes Pokemon, me too. So so we like the same things, and we are afraid of the same animals, or I'd say personal information, talking about yourself, connecting with others, and working on the rules for the classroom. That should be on the first day.
Solid advice.
Just to wrap it up, in general, Carina, what advice would you give new teachers who might be starting out teaching young learners?
I'd say take a step back, observe the kids, what is interesting for the students. Try to vary your class, okay? So one very active task, hands-on, a song, dancing, movement, a game, and then something on the table, like drawing or copying or cutting and pasting. So I'd say vary the activities, like active, let's rest a little bit, let's play a game, let's do something with some more quiet time. Something nice is also to incorporate your students' ideas. So when they suggest something, try to go with what the students say. If they suggest a game, they feel very proud of participating, of answering questions. So whenever they come up with something, with an idea, try to make a good use of that idea. And hands-on, have lots of energy, be enthusiastic about what you're going to teach, and bring an element of surprise. So for kids, when you say, you know what we're going to talk about today? Can you guess? Bring a picture in a box. Can you guess what's inside this box? And then you can do like, show a little bit. So raise this interest in your students.
Yeah.
They love this element
That's a
of
great
surprise.
hook. Yeah.
And again, if you are not enthusiastic about it, they won't be. So it all depends on how much you like that topic, and your enthusiasm will be contagious. The students will also like, wow, depending on your facial expressions and body language. Can't go wrong.
That's great. Well, I've certainly learned a lot from you today, having had pretty much no experience teaching young learners. You've kind of made me want to try because you're so excited about it. And you've mentioned a lot of really, really interesting aspects of it and gave really good advice. So thank you for that. And thank you for being with us once again on the podcast.
Okay, my pleasure. And whenever you need any more tips, just let me know.
We'll be sure to reach out, Carina. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Carina. And thank you, everyone, for listening to our episode today.
Yeah, and remember to subscribe to receive the latest episodes each Wednesday. And you can follow us on Instagram at ESL Talk Podcast, or you can send us an email to esltalkpodcast@gmail.com. You can also find me on Instagram at Learning with Faye.
Or you can find me at I'm Daniel Teacher. That's all we have time for this week. Be sure to join us again next week for another new episode of ESL Talk.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe for new episodes and to follow us on Instagram and Facebook for even more ESL teaching content.